back to Jerusalem. Now you remember that the children of Israel were the first ones to decide, all right, we need to bring David back. And when I say the children of Israel, you're going to notice in this section that there's a distinction made between the men of Israel and the men of Judah. Now, it's the United Kingdom, right? It's not the divided kingdom yet, but you already see that there's some tension between the 10 tribes of Israel and the 2 tribes of what will later be the kingdom of Judah. And it comes out in this story, in this story here. So the men of Israel have already extended a welcome back to David, but the men of Judah were reluctant to do so. As a matter of fact, they were kind of perplexed on that. Why would they maybe be struggling a little bit more with that? That's right. And many of them were the very ones that were his strongest supporters and higher officials in his rebellion or whatever. So what does David do to help them with that? Did y'all read this? That's exactly right. Yeah, and even the captain of Absalom's army, Amasa, he said, I'll make you captain of my army and remove Joab. Why would he might want to remove Joab? Yeah, Joab defied his orders. And now, we're not told how David found out about that, but I'm sure that he probably did. And it's just interesting that at this point, he's willing to take Joab out of the picture and put Amasa in Joab's place there. So, with these words, verse 14 says, he swayed all of the men of Judah, just as the heart of one man, so that they sent word to the king saying, return you and all of your servants. So David returns. He comes to the Jordan, and he came to Gilgal. So he was up, his capital was in his capital. Where he was taking refuge during this was Mahanaim. So now he's come down and he's crossing the Jordan at Gilgal, just right there near Jericho, right north of the Dead Sea. And so he comes to there to cross over, and notice who comes to greet him. Hold on, before we get into anything anybody want to add before we go further? You got anything?
Now this would be the same Gilgal Israel established their first camp when
That's
they
right.
came into the land.
That's right, right after crossing.
Because there are a few different Gilgals spread throughout the land.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah. He does well in trying to unite the factions in this. Very good. Anything else? So we're told some of the people that come to meet him there at Gilgal. And who's the first one that we see? Well, where did we last see Shimei? Kicking dust, throwing rocks, and cursing the king as he goes out. Why wasn't he killed then? Yeah, David said, maybe the Lord sent him to curse me. And so let him alone. Maybe the Lord will hear his curses and have pity on me and have mercy upon me and bring me back. So now David is returning victorious. If I was Shimei, I may be heading out the other side of the country. But he takes a different approach, and he approaches the king on this.
Well, at least he doesn't come alone.
No, he does not come alone. As a matter of fact, when we read this, we may wonder what's going on here. And I wonder if David didn't even want. Last time we saw him, he's, obviously rebelling against David. Now he comes with how many men? 1,000 Benjamites with him. And also we see Ziba. You remember Ziba was the one who was taking care of Saul's property and taking care of Mephibosheth early on. He comes, but he comes with 15 sons and 20 servants with him. Now, last time we saw Ziba was when David was getting out of Jerusalem as well. Was he friend or foe? All right. That's a good point. What did he do for David? Yeah, so at least on the surface, it looks like he's loyal to David and trying to help David here. Sherry brought up an interesting point that we will debate here in just a little bit about this. So Ziba comes with his servants and his household, and they have a ferry boat to cross over, and bring the king across the Jordan. And so, but it's just interesting that Shimei is there and Ziba. You see the Benjamites there on this occasion, and the men of Judah are the ones that have welcomed you back. So keep that in mind as we go further. Any other thoughts through verse 18? All right.
All right. So it says halfway through, Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan, and said to the king, "Let not my lord hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. Do not let the king take it to heart." That's convenient, isn't it? Don't take what I said seriously, in other words. Verse 20, "For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come this day, the first of all the household of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king." So, yeah, not only did he try to make it a little bit more difficult for David to put him to death by bringing 1,000 other Benjamites with him, but he comes clean saying, don't take what I said seriously. That was foolishness, and I acknowledge my foolishness. Now, what would you think typically a king's response would be to this? Yes, absolutely. I mean, most kings would want to set a precedence against anything like this ever arising again. And verse 21 says, "Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered, Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" And that's a good question. I mean, Abishai would have been one who was with David when David was on the run from Saul. And you remember, David had multiple opportunities to take Saul out. And yet he knew how David felt about the Lord's anointed. It was to be respected. And in fact, Abishai he was the one that David had the perfect opportunity to take him out. And Abishai wanted to take him out. And David told him, said, "No, do not." And also, who was the one that brought the false news about slaying Saul?
Yeah,
and what happened? Cushite. What happened to him? David put him to death because he did not respect the Lord's anointed. So it's a good question. Why should he not be put to death? But look at David's response. But David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should this day be an adversary to me? Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel?" And the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king gave him his oath. It's hard to say exactly. I don't know if your version says anything different there in the wording or whatnot. But I don't think David wants any hindrances in him coming back to Jerusalem. Could this be a stumbling block in the people accepting him back? Because right now, I mean, he's kind of on shaky ground. Things are pretty divided within the country. As you said, we've seen those cracks before, but now there's a strong division being shaped here. And he's kind of on fragile ground as far as coming back. And so do you want to start your campaign, first thing crossing Jordan and you're already shedding blood? I don't know if that was a factor in his decision here, or if he's just decided he's seen enough blood for, this occasion. I mean, 20,000 Israelites have died in battle. Is that not enough blood? Regardless, he gives Shimei the pass at this time. But Shimei's story is not quite over with. We'll see this rear its head again.
It's really interesting to look at David's rulership here and his decision making for this, because there's a couple of ways to look at particularly this story. One is that David is very forgiving. He doesn't exact vengeance here. He could, he has the right to, but he does not. He's forgiving and merciful, and that sounds good. The rest of the story may make us question whether that was his motive here.
Yeah.
And so the other way to look at this is that maybe David feels like his hands are tied here. That this would be yes, Shimei deserves to die, should be put to death. That would be the right thing to do. But in this circumstance, he just can't afford to do that because it would create such problem, and things are not stable enough at this point to be able to do that. So I don't know. We can think more about that as we get further along. I do like what. Hold on here. Never mind. Scratch it.
Saul, when he was made king, some people disagreed. They want to put him to death. And Saul said about the same exact phrase.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing that today. Today's a celebration day.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
That's
also, too, Amishai here, I assume is David's nephew, him with Joab.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're replaced by another one of David's nephews, if I read that correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So look at as you study Samuel, look at the interplay of David's family.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other day we talked about Abimelech. I mean, Absalom's sons all being killed because of him. That would be David's grandsons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
David's lost a lot of family members here.
Yes.
Ammon,
Yep.
grandsons, another son.
Sword will never depart.
Never depart.
Yeah.
So just try to get in. If this was happening to you, try to get in David's mind and his psyche the whole way through Samuel. And you go, I don't have near the problems David did. And he started forward.
That's right. Good point. Yeah, to your point, this was the phrase that I was looking for, and I couldn't find it a second ago. It says, "For do I not know that today I am king over Israel?" In other words, he seems to be saying kind of what you were saying. This is a day of celebration. He didn't have to be put to death to prove that I'm king on this occasion. But as Gerald said, there's more to this story that will take place later, so we will hang on.
And David didn't discipline Joab and Abishai for killing Abner.
Yeah.
And he let all of Israel know that he didn't do it.
Right.
Then he let all Israel know not to hurt his son Absalom, and Joab still did.
Yeah.
Joab and Abishai, like he said in my version, they're fierce. I cannot do anything.
Yeah.
We see that all the way through.
Yes.
These are his nephews.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Good point. All right, so verse 24. Mephibosheth. What was the last thing we heard about Mephibosheth? He was rejoicing because he felt like this may be an opportunity for him to take the kingdom. At least that's the report that David heard. And so now Mephibosheth comes. So can you imagine, here's David returning, and you wouldn't expect to see Shimei there, and there's Shimei. You wouldn't expect to see Mephibosheth there, and there's Mephibosheth. And so Mephibosheth comes, but as soon as you see Mephibosheth, you would notice something about it. What would you notice? The smell.
Mm-hmm.
It says he hadn't washed his clothes, but he was unkept in this. It's like, what is going on with him? And it says that he had not cared for his feet, he had not trimmed his mustache, he had not washed his clothes from the day that the king departed until he came back in peace. And so David, I think, may be a little bit perplexed with this because the last thing he heard, Mephibosheth was rejoicing that David was being ousted as king, and now he looks at him and he looks like a man that's been grieving and mourning, and so he says, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" And Mephibosheth responds and says, "My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go with the king, because your servant is lame. And he slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like an angel of God, therefore do what is good in your eyes." Okay, so what does he say here? Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth? What's he say? Put it in your own words. I couldn't. I couldn't find transportation, and the guy who was supposed to help me, he left me and
Deserted him.
He deserted me, and then what did he tell you? He told you that I was rejoicing over this and planning on taking the kingdom for myself, and that wasn't true. But then he says, so it's one word against another word. It's Ziba's word against Mephibosheth's word, and Mephibosheth just says, but you're wise enough You're wise enough. You do whatever you see is right. And then he adds this in there. He says, for all of my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king, yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore, what right have I to cry out any more to the king? In other words, you've already done more for me than I would ever deserve. I'm not really trying to make a defense here. You asked the question, here's what happened. Now that's a very different story than what David had in his mind before. What do you do with information? There's a proverb that says that a way seems right until you hear the other side, until the other person tells their side of the story. And so now David is sitting there thinking, well, I wonder who's telling the truth here. And how do you determine that? Well, here's what David does, verse 29. The king said, why do you speak any more of this matter? I have said, you and Ziba divide the land. Now, what had he told Ziba before when Ziba came and said, Mephibosheth is rejoicing that he thinks the king was coming back in? All right, well, Ziba, you just take the land. Obviously, Ziba seemed loyal to him because he brought him food and everything. So you just take the land. But now he finds out maybe Ziba was lying about that. If Ziba's lying, what would Ziba probably deserve? Probably death. That was pretty serious. I mean, that wasn't, that was pretty serious.
This was to the king, a lie to the king, not a commoner.
Yeah, and something that would, yes, exactly. Yeah, treason is a big one. When you say treason was worthy of death, and he could have cost Mephibosheth his life. Does David seem to know what would be the right thing to do here? What's the truth? I think if he knew for certain that Ziba was lying, he wouldn't have given Ziba half the land. If he knew for sure that Mephibosheth was lying, he wouldn't have given part of the land to Mephibosheth. He seems to not know exactly what to do, so he says, all right, well, just divide it evenly.
Split it down the middle.
And Mephibosheth responds and says, rather let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house. All right, so what's your judgment on this? It kind of looks that way, doesn't it? It kind of looks like Mephibosheth. The evidence, just looking at Mephibosheth does not look like one that says, hey, I'm about to be king. He looks like one that's been grieving and mourning over this, and he doesn't seem to even want to profit in this. He just happy David's back. So maybe that's the case. We're not told all the details of that. But what's interesting to me about this is we've been saying that David is a type of the Christ in many ways. He's a type of the Christ. All of the kings of Judah and Israel were types of the Christ. But they all fell short. And with Jesus, do you think Jesus would have known who was telling the truth and who was lying? Do you think Jesus could have set things right the way they were supposed to be? Yes. David wasn't able to do that. And he didn't know all of that. And so we're looking at him and saying, wouldn't it be great to have a king like David? Yeah, David's a good king. But I would much rather have a king like Jesus, who is righteous and holy and knows and can exact. So when you look at the prophecies later on in the prophets, and it talks about the Messiah coming, and it talks about him reigning in righteousness and truth, that's something that none of these kings could completely do, because they just didn't have all that they needed to do. But Jesus did. And so it makes us long for that Messiah. Even with the good kings, we long for the Messiah.
One cool note I thought about was here on this kind of judgment, yeah, David falls short because he doesn't know which side's telling the truth. But you think about his son Solomon, who asked for wisdom, and what does God give him? Wisdom. And he has one of these scenarios before him. And he's able to cut through the fog and find the truth through that godly wisdom.
He says divide it. and someone also says, no, just let them have it. So there's a similar parallel.
But the wisdom to know that the true mother would stand up and, for the child's life on that occasion.
Yes, it's a busy day, the time crossing Jordan, but David should maybe spend a few moments in the Word of God We've seen him do that
Yeah.
in stressful, and,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
not that this is stressful,
Yeah.
but God could have revealed.
Exactly.
okay,
Yeah.
This
That,
is telling the truth, not this.
right. Good point. Good point. Any other thoughts? All right.
Mother.
First up.
All right. Verse 31. Now Barzillai, the Gileadite, had come down from Rogelim, and he went on with the king to the Jordan to escort him over the Jordan. Now, who is Barzillai? Do we remember him? Make sure we're on the same page. What was that? Yeah. He was a lord on the Transjordan side, a wealthy man that aided David in his time of need. It says verse 32, Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old, and had provided the king with food while he stayed in Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. And the king said to Barzillai, "Come over with me, and I will provide for you with me in Jerusalem." Now, you just, think about that. Let that, David is wanting to repay Barzillai. And of course, I mean, Barzillai is a wealthy man, but this is the opportunity of a lifetime right here, the offering that David is making to him. And you think about that and let that sink in for a minute. But look at Barzillai's response, verse 35. I am this day 80 years old. Can I discern what is pleasant and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats or what he drinks? Can I still listen to the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king repay me with such a reward? So, I mean, Barzillai realizes that this is a great opportunity, but at the same time, it would be wasted on him. After all, I mean, he says, I'm at the age now where, I can't enjoy the taste of, good foods. I can't hear the pure sounds of singing and music and whatnot. I'm of the age I will not fully enjoy this. Well, what you're offering me. But he says, please let your servant return that I may die in my own city near the grave of my father and my mother. But here is your servant, Chimham. Let him go over with my lord the king and do for him whatever seems good to you. I don't know who this Chimham is. Probably, his most faithful servant. But wow. It's a pretty cool ordeal to see a man and be able to recognize his position, his state, and to offer this gift to someone else. And, a younger man that would truly be able to reap the rewards of what David is offering on this occasion. And so David says in verse 38, and the king answered, Chimham shall go over with me, and I will do for him whatever seems good to you. And all that you desire of me, I will do for you. Then all the people went over the Jordan, and the king went over. And the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own home. And the king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went on with him. All the people of Judah and also half of the people of Israel brought the king on his way. So, yeah, Chimham, he hit that lottery ticket. I mean, he hit it big on this occasion, thanks to his Lord, his master. But here, there's beauty in this story you see here of such a gift being offered to a man, and yet him having the wisdom to say, I'm at the age now, I'll never fully enjoy this, but I'm going to bestow this on my faithful servant. And again, I'm assuming who this person was. Maybe it was a son. I don't know. But regardless, he was able to recognize that this gift really belonged to a younger man who could really enjoy it. And so King David moves on to Gilgal. He is on Israel's side now, and yet you have who is escorting him to Jerusalem? Judah and half the people of Israel. So you're really seeing the split. And of course, I would assume that the half of Israel were David's supporters, and the other half would have been Absalom's support. I don't know that for sure. It may not be. I don't know. Maybe it's as we see. Maybe it was just those who were unaware of what was going on. But regardless, you see that split that Lonnie's talking about with Israel.
Going back to Barzillai here, and kind of piggybacking off of what I said earlier about David as a good king, and yet he has some limitations in that. So I was thinking about this and talking about things that would have been really, really valuable to you at one age and not necessarily valuable to you at another age. You know, if somebody would have given me a sports bike when I was in my 20s or 30s, that would have been, matter of fact, you had one. I think you even offered to let me ride it, and I turned you down, which I regretted on that. But that would have been, wow, thank you so much. If you gave me one of those things now, I would say, that's nice. I can sell it. We'll go out to eat, you know? So some things have changed a little bit there. What do you think? What could have David? What would really be a reward to Barzillai at 80 years old? Be safe at home with his family. Any of you who are, you don't have to be 80 years old, but what are some things that, like, if you had, you know, a wish list, somebody could grant you anything, like, what are some things that you would want?
Another 20 years.
Another 20 years. Could
There you
David
go.
offer him that? Could David offer him that?
No.
What else? Give me another one. Good health. Could David offer him that? David was offering what he could. It was a good reward, but it wasn't a great reward for him. Let me ask you this. Could Jesus offer Barzillai what Barzillai would really want and need at this point? Yes. Eternal life. Eternal life. So again, we're left longing for the one who could really reward his faithful servants with what would truly be best for the man. Now, this is no fault of David's. It's just simply the fact he's not God. And that's why we need a king that's God. And that's why we're looking forward to a king who will be God in Jesus Christ. That's great.
Yeah.
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 Very good. Yeah, it just seems like he kind of met him on the way out, provided for him, and it seems like maybe he continued to send provisions. I don't think he was with David the whole time that David was at Mahanaim, because he comes back from Rogelim here, but it seems like that he was supporting David maybe the whole time he was in Mahanaim. Yeah, Jim Ham. Yeah. Yeah. Very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I don't know. Barzillai seems like a good guy. I have no reason to think that him and David didn't share a common faith, probably. And if that was the case, Barzillai's influence and time is very limited. But with David, maybe his servant had more time to be around a godly man, and maybe that played a role in it as well.
All right. So, verse 41. Just then all the men of Israel came to the king and said, "Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stole you away and brought the king, his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan?" Oh, no. So the men of Judah answered the men of Israel and said, "Because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten from the king's expense, or has he given us a gift?" And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, "We have 10 shares in the king. Therefore, we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? We are were we not the first to advise bringing the king back? Yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. All right. The men of Judah, are they supporting David? Yes. The men of Israel, are they supporting David? Yeah, at least half of them, right? The ones in this particular account, they're both supporting David. But they can't get along with each other. Jealousy. That's exactly right. You're getting more honor than we are. We're the ones who thought of bringing him back. Well, we're his kinfolk. And here it goes. Here it goes. Who's hurting? Is this helping anything? What's being hurt by this? The kingdom is being hurt. The king is being hurt. The cause is being hurt. Can you think of maybe a lesson in this? When God's people who support the king squabble and can't get along and can't be united, who does it hurt? What does it hurt? It hurts the kingdom. It hurts the king. It hurts the cause. Do you understand why there's so many passages in the New Testament that talk about striving to be unified, bearing with one another, being patient, those type of things? Because when we forget that, what we end up doing is we end up causing a lot of problems for the king and for the kingdom. And so we see that here. And I just think about David. David's like, finally, we're getting this back together. Okay, Shimei, I'm not going to deal with you right now. Mephibosheth and Ziba, let's just divide it in half. Let's just have peace. Let's just, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
And here my supporters can't get along. And problems come. And so I think there's just a lot of lessons as we go through here that we learn from that hopefully will help us to be better supporters of our king.
You know, if it wasn't for David provoking all this to happen, he would probably still be on the Transjordan side right now. Because the men of Israel, what were they doing? They were all in their separate tribes just talking, yah-yah. You know, how are we going to do this? But it never got past the talking stage. David was the one who put things into action and made this come to fruition.
And here's the thing. Timmy mentioned jealousy, and that's exactly right. This isn't over any type of significant issue. This is over pettiness, and we want glory. We want this. And then the response to this is it escalates. And the words of the men of Judah are fiercer than, well, what does that have to do? You know, what is that? And so you see all of the carnality coming out of this. And it's over petty issues, and it's aroused emotions and brute force exhibiting itself, and it's just a disaster. Yes. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's right. That's right. So here's the solution. There happened to be a rebel. There's always a rebel somewhere. They're just looking for a cause. And it happened that there was a rebel whose name was Sheba, the son of Birkai, and a Benjamite, and he blew the trumpet and said, "We have no part with David, nor do we have an inheritance in the sons of Jesse. Every man to his tents, O Israel." So every man of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, the son of Birkai, and the men of Judah and from the Jordan as far as Jerusalem remained loyal to their king. So now we have God's people divided, and we have people turning away from following the Lord's anointed because of petty bickering that's taking place. Does that happen today? Do people turn away from being faithful to the Lord because God's people can't get along? Yes. Yes. And so we see it in this story and we say, this is terrible. This should never happen. Yes, that's right.
We have another rebellion in the making here.
And in some ways, just as serious, if not more serious.
Yeah.
And David recognized
But before he decides to deal with that, he's back in Jerusalem and he addresses the issue with his concubines. Now, he left his concubines behind to take care of the house. But what happened by leaving them behind? Yeah. So Absalom has disgraced them, and David, he can't go back to them after this has happened, and it's sad, but it says that that David dismissed them as far as he never went back into them again. They basically lived the rest of their lives in widowhood. It doesn't say anything about whether they had children or didn't have children, but that's the way the rest. Now they were cared for. David cared for them, but he would never go into them again because of Absalom's work.
And like you said, it is tragic. This
It
is
is.
very sad.
It is.
And this is another result of sin that takes place.
They're casualties in all this.
They're casualties.
Yeah. So as Lonnie said before, who is commander of David's army now? Yeah. Verse 4. Then the king said to Amasa, "Call the men of Judah together to me within 3 days, and be here yourself." So Amasa, he's the man now, and the orders are given to put together an army of the men of Judah and report back to me in 3 days. So Amasa went to summon Judah, but what? He delayed. What was the delay? Don't know. Text doesn't tell us. But he is delayed and beyond the set time that had been appointed to him. And David said to Abishai, "Now Sheba the son of Bichri will do us more harm than Absalom. Take your Lord's servants and pursue him, lest he get himself to fortified cities and escape from us." And so Amasa's first command, he falls short of. I don't know. I don't know what's taking place. I don't know, but that's pretty bad. Your first order, you completely miss it. So David has to go to his backup here, apparently.
Not Joab.
Not Joab. Still not Joab. His brother, but not Joab, who has been his commander. So David obviously has some pretty harsh feelings against Joab at this point in time. It says, verse 7, "And there went out from him Joab's men, and the cherub." Did I miss?
No.
Is that right?
Not Joab, but
Joab's men.
yeah. So this is interesting how this is. David is putting the responsibility to someone else, but Joab seems to be a factor in this.
He's going to slip his way in there, isn't he? "And there went out after him Joab's men, and Cherethites and Pelethites, and all the mighty men. They went out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba the son of Bichri. Then they were at the great stone that is in Gibeon. And Amasa came to meet them." Now, here we go. Now Joab. Joab's on the scene. You knew you couldn't keep Joab away from battle. Joab was wearing a soldier's garment, and over it was a belt with a sword in its sheath, fastened on his thigh. And as he went forward, it fell out. How convenient. Why would he be going forward? What is... Well, let's continue with the story. "And Joab said to Amasa," so he's greeting Amasa. He says, "Is it well with you, my brother?" And Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. So here he is. This almost sounds like Jesus and Judas. Here, the deception with a kiss. This is what Joab is portraying. So he lowers himself, and as he lowers himself, his sword falls out of its sheath. So he grabs Amasa by the beard. I don't know if that's to keep the eye contact and keep Amasa's eyes off the sword that was being drawn, or what, but he grabs him by the beard, and as he portrays giving him a kiss of kindness, of greeting, of warmth, what does he do? Yeah. Man, what a gruesome scene. What a gruesome scene. And the way all this portrays itself and unfolds says verse 10, but Amasa did not absorb the sword that was in Joab's hand. And I wonder if that beard, if that was part of it, be able to keep his eyes up high and keep that eye contact where he couldn't see that sword. I don't know. But yeah, he stabs him in the stomach. And it's a gruesome scene. It says, then Joab and Abishai, his brother, pursued Sheba, the son of Bichri, and one of Joab's young men took his stand by Amasa and said, whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab. Isn't that an interesting? Because, Joab and David, there's an obvious division between these two. And Joab has been demoted. I don't know where he's been demoted to, but, he's not commander of the army. But here, this one couples Joab and David back together. Of course, everybody's on David's side, but what are they automatically having to do now? If you're on David's side, you're having to join yourself with Joab as well. So he tells them, whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab. And all the while Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the road. And said, anyone who came by seeing him stopped. So yeah, you think this would be an obvious distraction and just horror to witness the gruesomeness of this occasion? So this individual says that it says that he carries Amasa drags him out of the road into a field and throws a garment over him. He realizes, this is a distraction for these people to follow Joab. So he just drags them, wow, this is rough. This is rough. This is gruesome. Verse 13 says, when he was taken out of the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. Man, it's a rough story.
Yeah, you look at this. So David's way of coming back and dealing with those who rebelled against him was, look, all is forgotten. Let's move forward. Joab's way of dealing with this is a little bit more mafia style, and that is no, you betrayed us. You betrayed us. You will pay. And anybody, I want to make a lesson for anybody else who would think of betrayal. You notice that Joab knew how to kill people. Joab was good with the sword. He didn't drop his sword all the time. He knew what he was doing this whole time. And when he kills him, how does he kill him? Stabbed him where?
The stomach.
In the stomach. All right, so any of you who are deer hunters know if you make a bad shot, you make a gut shot, is that a quick death? That's a very slow death for that animal. Joab knows that as well. And then the text says what, Frida? You were about to say it, I think. How many times? Just once. That's exactly right. He could have put him out of his misery, but he didn't. And then he left him there in the road for everybody coming to see and stationed somebody there to say, hey, note this.
Yep.
Pay attention to this. This is what happens if you don't follow Joab.
Yep.
You don't follow David. And finally it becomes such a scene that, okay, well, we got to get him out of here. People can't handle this. And so, yeah, this is what we're seeing in Joab's character here is very opposite of David's character. But like you said, Joab weasels his way back into power with this. And so
he doesn't take demotions very well, does he? He's not willingly to give up his position of authority very well.
All right, any final comments? I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I would say it's probably two things. It's probably he was in Absalom's rebellion, and David had promoted him and promoted him over Joab. And So
That's what made him Captain Stevens. That's what he worked.
no, David made him captain.
Made him myself.
Yes.
Absalom made him myself. Captain Stevens. Joab.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Joab was loyal to David. Yeah. Yeah. He did have a personal thing.
His another cousin killed a cousin.
Yep. That's right.
Yep.
Absalom
Yep.
was his cousin, first cousin,
Yep.
brother. Amish, first cousin.
Yes.
Did you know Joab killed Abner the same way as that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Secretly.
Yep.
Just like.
I know. Mafia style.
But David had control of the sons of Jeriah before he was king.
Yeah.
When he became king and they got in position of power, David couldn't control it.
Yep.
But he used it
Yep.
for his advantage to win
Right.
these wars. But he never disciplined.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Thank y'all for your good attention, good comments.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be beneficial, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with others that you feel like may benefit from it. If you need to contact us, please contact us via email at quinn.church@yahoo.com. Also, if you're in the area, we would love for you to come visit with us at one of our assemblies. Have a good day.